Hey guys, it's Jane. Here am I back to give you the second half of my January wrap up. Okay, I'm going to try really hard to be a little bit more succinct this time, which is hard because now I've got all the really good ones to talk about. But hey, we'll give it a red hot go. Okay, firstly, there are two middle grade books. One that I listened to as an audiobook and one that I read on my e-reader that are just firm recommendations. The first one was Just Macbeth. This is the audiobook that I listened to in the car while we were on holidays. Written by Andy Griffith, who is part of the Andy Griffith Terry Denton team that did the 13-story treehouse that I talked about in Read Kids Lit Month. For a start, the audiobook of this is amazing. It's not just a reading, it's like a theatre production, but all of the voices are done by this one guy, and he does old men accents, he does kids, he does women. It's amazing and it's hilarious. So the story is there's three kids who are like 12-year-olds or something who are studying Macbeth at school, and they've been given a scene that the three of them are working up together, and it's the witches scene, and they've decided to go method on it. So they're actually trying to get all the ingredients that I mentioned and mix it up in Mum's food processor. So there's a bit there's the girl is trying to convince Annie to cut his dog's tongue out. So they've got tongue of dog, and it's a cack. Anyway, so they do the potion and drink it, it turns out. And then magic happens, push! And they are sent back into medieval Scotland. And all these people think that the Lisa is Lady Macbeth and Andy is Macbeth, and I can't remember the third guy's name. Sorry, it's not Terry, it's somebody else in this one. The other guy is Banquo, Macbeth's best friend. And so the rest of the story, we actually have basically a really quite faithful retelling of the Macbeth story, and we phase in and out of them actually using the Shakespearean, like reading the speeches and stuff like that. Especially when there are other characters on stage apart from our three kids, they will be pretending, and they will phase into the speeches. But then we'll also have, when other people aren't there, they're fighting, and there's fart jokes, and there's food fights, and it's a cack. It sounds like it absolutely should not work. Like Shakespearean tragedy married to silly kid humor, but in the audiobook, at any rate, it was hilarious. So that is a strong recommendation. The second one was a completely different thing. It's a Catherine Jinx's A Very Singular Guild, which is the final of the City of Orphans trilogy. I read the first two a few years ago. At that point, the third one wasn't out. It actually came out, I think, 2013, but I missed it at the time. Catherine Jinx is an Australian author, and she writes really superior middle grade fiction, and reading this third one just reminded me exactly how much I love her and I love this series. So it's sort of set in Dickensian London, and there's boggles about. Boggles are these magical creatures who eat children. So one of our through characters throughout the whole series is Alfred Bunce, who is a boggler. That is, his profession is dispatching boggles. A boggler always works with an apprentice because you need an apprentice as bait, i.e. you need a child, because boggles only eat children. You need a child who will sing, stands in a kind of magic circle and sings to attract the boggle, and then Alfred Bunce there with his spear is there to dispatch the boggle, hopefully before he eats the child. There is actually, in the backstory, Alfred did at one point lose one of his apprentices, which is, this sort of thing that hangs over all of them. But yeah, so the first book is it centers on one apprentice, Birdie. The second book focuses on a second apprentice, Gem. The third book, this one, A Very Singular Guild, focuses on a third apprentice, Ned, and they're all quite, the three children are quite different. It's a beautiful, beautiful adventure fantasy kids book. Really beautifully written, and if you at all interested in middle grade fiction, I would strongly recommend these books. Okay, I also read On Writing by Stephen King, which is a memoir come guide to the mechanics of writing and being published. If you're at all interested in Stephen King or interested in writing, I'm not a Stephen King reader because I'm a scaredy cat and I don't read horror, but this was really good, and the memoir parts were interesting, and the advice for writers part was really, really good. So that's a highly recommended. I read Kindred this month, which I've made a video on. A black woman, Dana, gets dragged back into slaveholding, the slaveholding South in the US. It's an amazing, amazing read. It's not a book for children because there's violence and, bad things happening. But I strongly recommend this book. It's the first Octavia Butler that I've read, and it will not be my last. I also read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Everybody and their dog on BookTube has read this, so I don't feel like there's much that I can add. I loved it. I really, really loved it. There's a pandemic, almost everybody dies, and most of the story is set after that. It's not, I didn't personally feel that it had a sci-fi vibe, even though I guess a future dystopian thing, strictly speaking, is sci-fi. The book that it reminded me most of in terms of its atmosphere was actually A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. That's a completely different story, but similar structurally. Like, you have a group of characters and the story sort of follows one, then another, then another, then another, and time sort of passes and things go backwards and forwards, and you've got a loosely connected group of main characters. It's not just one through line. I love this book. It's actually quite uplifting for all that it's a post-apocalyptic drama. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Now, this is not a book for everybody. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's beautifully written. But by the same token, it's long, and for a lot of it, not a lot happens. Things happen, but it's not a plot-heavy book. It's about a boy who a terrible thing happens to when he's about 14 or something at the beginning of the book. He's got in trouble at school. He's been suspended, so he's off school. His mother takes him to the museum to see this painting that she really wants to see called The Goldfinch. While they're in the museum, there's a terrorist attack of some description. Bombs go off. Theo, who's this boy, is basically unhurt, but almost everybody is killed. That he talks to, there's a man who was injured in the blast, and this man gives Theo the goldfinch. The goldfinch had been blown off the wall, and he hands the painting. He puts it into his bag, into Theo's bag actually, and then dies. And Theo sort of staggers out of the museum with the painting, and his life is never the same. And that's basically the story. I was only so engaged in the book in the middle third, but the ending of the book is so beautiful that it made the whole read worth it to me. And if you read any literary fiction, I would strongly recommend that you have a look at The Goldfinch. Now, My favourite book of the month. It was Margaret Atwood's Year of the Flood, which is the second of the Mad Adam trilogy after Oryx and Crake. It doesn't actually continue the story of Oryx and Crake. It actually tells almost all of the same instance from a point of view of a different group of characters, which means that the third one is going to have to tie up those two storylines together, and I'm really looking forward to reading the third one. But it also means that you probably don't actually even have to have read Oryx and Crake, which I loved, but this one I think I love more. You could just read this one, The Year of the Flood. It's amazing. That is it. That is all I'm going to say. I commit now, fully committing. I'm going to make a video to tell you just how amazing it was. But that's the one. If you want to read any of these ones that I've talked about, that is the one, The Year of the Flood. Anyway, I hope you're all well. I hope you've had a great month reading, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.